Hi everyone, it's William, and this is possibly a bad idea. I'm here at Schatzalp, and I forgot to bring my phone stand, and so I've sort of improvised one using, of all things, the stand for a fondue maker, but yeah, it's not very effective. So I could have waited till tomorrow. Today is Tuesday, the 1st of April. Although I assure you the diary entry today is not a joke one, it's absolutely authentic. But anyway, I wanted to do it. So here I am, the light is waning. This is not the best setup. Top of my head is cut off unless I lean forward or lean way back. At any rate, I'm in the Grand Salon at the Berg Hotel Schatzalp in Davos, Switzerland. This is the very place where Dmitri spent the last 2.5 years of his life and then died here in March 1942, the 5th of March. And we will have plenty of time to see different parts of the hotel. Formerly a sanatorium. When Dmitri was here, of course, it was a tuberculosis sanatorium. Meantime, I'm just going to do this one here tonight, even though it's not very picturesque. You can see I'm sitting on a sofa, and behind me, unfortunately, I'm backlit. You can see the big picture windows that were quite a feature of the Grand Salon. Okay. We have a very serious diary entry today. The last one was the recap. So this is part 6 of the long diary entry of April 30th, 1921. And then there will actually be one more part 7. But part 5 was just a discussion about the ongoing saga of General Wrangel and his troops who were stranded in Constantinople and would have preferred to stay there, but were having to make arrangements to leave, not only leave, but disperse. They weren't going to be able to leave in one big body as Wrangel would have liked. Okay, our cast today, we have Maria, Dmitri's sister. We have someone whom Dmitri refers to only as an old priest. So you'll find out about him. And yeah, here we go. Now I'm going to talk about my personal situation. Today is the 30th of April, Holy Saturday. The day before yesterday, I confessed. It was terribly frightening, and for a long time I couldn't make up my mind to do it. After all, I haven't fasted since 1916, so it was really strange to go to confession again. Maria so much wanted me to do it, but she didn't pressure me at all, and I myself couldn't decide whether I would go through with it or not until the last minute. Last year, I didn't have the guts to do it. I admit that frankly. Well, and it was also the case that I didn't want to go to the London priest, who's extremely antipathetic to me. But that wasn't the main reason. I was simply afraid to talk about my part in the murder of Rasputin. Though I have no blood on my hands, my involvement was so complete that it makes no real difference. The local Paris priest was extraordinarily touching. He seemed to grasp very well how hard it had been for me to come to confession, and he questioned me and talked to me with amazing warmth and simplicity. I laid everything out, and I have to say I felt completely different afterwards. Maria was remarkably touching and told me later that she'd been praying for me during my whole confession. The words of the old priest were especially touching and solemn when, with his hands on my head, he recited the prayer for the forgiveness of sins. Okay, so there we go. And if you're not Orthodox, then this requires a little bit of background information. I am not Russian Orthodox, I'm Greek Orthodox. So my confessions have always been to Greek Orthodox priests and not to Russian, but unless I'm very much mistaken, it's the same. I mean, certainly it's the same prayers and the same procedure, if you want to put it that way, the same tradition. Okay, so as Dmitri was writing this on the 30th of April, it was Holy Saturday, which means it was the Saturday of Easter. Well, Pascha. So Pascha is the Orthodox term for Easter. And on Saturday, the Orthodox don't have a late night Christmas service like Roman Catholics do. They have a late night Pascha service. So you go to church at 11 for Orthros, and then at midnight the grand Pascha service begins. And so we will be hearing about Dmitri doing that. But he's talking about something that happened a few days before. So he said it was the day before yesterday. He's writing on the 30th that he'd gone to confession. So this was something that one traditionally did before Pascha. One went to confession before Pascha. One fasted very seriously for Lent, or at least for Holy Week. So Holy Saturday was the last day of Holy Week. And the fast in the Orthodox Church is from meat, dairy, and oil. And so it's not going without food. It is for the period of Lent going without meat and oil and dairy. And then on Holy Saturday, you will fast completely after a certain period of time. I think, what's the cutoff? Definitely after 6 o'clock. After sundown, basically, you're fasting completely and not even supposed to drink water. But concessions are made for the fact that some people, do need to drink water. But anyway, the tradition is stricter from what I know. My godmother is Russian Orthodox, and she's in her 90s, so old school. And the tradition is much stricter in the Russian Orthodox Church. Across the boards. I mean, in the Russian Orthodox Church, for instance, you go to confession always before you receive the Eucharist, whereas in the Greek Orthodox Church, you don't have to go to confession every time you receive the Eucharist. And in fact, the priests even say, look, if you're receiving the Eucharist every Sunday, then you need to confess even less, because it means you're preparing yourself. On Saturday, you're keeping the fast on every Wednesday and Friday, and you're preparing yourself on Saturday, and so you don't have to go to confession every time. But in the Russian Orthodox Church, that's different. Okay, let's see what else. So we know for sure that Dmitri wasn't fasting for Lent because he was with Coco in Monte Carlo, and living his normal life in the sense of having normal meals and not in a sort of spiritual space of preparing himself for Pascha. But that's okay. I usually don't do that either. I only usually do the strict fast during Holy Week. And we'll find out if Dmitri did that or not. So he goes to confession, and he hasn't done it since 1916. So that means that he hasn't done it since since the Rasputin assassination. So yeah, that's a big thing to have to confess. And the fact that he hasn't gone to confession since 1916 means that he hasn't received the Eucharist since 1916. He hasn't received the sacrament of communion. And that's kind of a big deal. So the priests at my church, at Holy Trinity Cathedral in Portland, Oregon, say that if you go 3 weeks without receiving the Eucharist, you have voluntarily excommunicated yourself. And that's not as serious as it sounds. You just then go to confession and receive communion. You don't have to, you don't have to go through any rites of being readmitted into the church. But, and there was a time when people, maybe it's still the case in the Orthodox Church, when people did not receive the Eucharist very often. Whereas in the modern Greek Orthodox Church of the diaspora, of the Greek diaspora, with the Patriarch in Constantinople, you're encouraged to receive the Eucharist as often as possible, and not with this really serious, intensive period of preparation, which is what my godmother was raised in, that tradition of you don't just go and do it. Okay, anyway, Dmitri hasn't done it since 1916 and since before the Rasputin assassination. If he was going to do it for the previous Pascha, he was in London at that time, and apparently part of the problem was not only that he didn't have the guts, as he put it, to face up to that, but that the London priest, there was some hostility that he felt on the part of the London priest. And that's possible. He may have been misinterpreting. He tended to be a sensitive person, and as we know from the time he was 14 years old, he always had this assumption that people thought the worst of him. And so that may have been, completely not the case. Or it may have been that the priest in London, yes, did think that Dmitri was partly guilty for the revolution because of the Rasputin assassination, or that, he'd betrayed the Tsar or whatever. So, he also could have been right about that. So let's see, yes, the London priest. So let's talk a little bit. I'm sorry that this one is going so long, but I feel like it's a really important one. So let's talk about the sacrament of confession in the Orthodox Church. So for one thing, the idea of sin is different from what it is, or what my understanding of it is, in the Roman Catholic Church. And also in the Protestant traditions. So Western Christianity tends to have what is called, or I've heard called, a forensic approach to the church and to sin. So sinning is like committing a crime, and in order for you to be acquitted, or however you want to say it, of the crime, you have to, it's like a law court. There are certain steps that have to be taken in order for this crime to be expunged from your record. Whereas the metaphor that's used in the Orthodox Church is that the church is like a hospital, that sin is missing the mark. And that is the literal meaning of the Greek word. Amartia, I think, means missing the mark, not hitting the target. And so it's like an error. Can be a very serious error, and it causes sickness. And the church wants to bring you back to spiritual health. So you don't go into a confession booth. Usually there's sort of like by the vestry or something. Varies from church to church. You can even just go, be in the nave. But you go in and you sit with the priest and you talk with the priest. There's no division between you. And you do talk. There's no ritual of, expressing it a certain way, like, I guess, what is it in the Catholic Church? Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. There's nothing like that. You're just talking with the priest. So it's not therapy, but it's not a recital of sins. Okay, I did this, I did this, I did this. You're talking about, your shortcomings and the things you feel like you need to work on. And then you kneel in front of the cross or an icon, and the priest takes his stole and puts it over your head and puts your hands on your head, on your head, and says this very simple prayer of absolution. And it's really a wonderful experience. It really is. Dmitri's right when he says you go and you feel completely different afterwards, and that doesn't mean that you don't still feel like remorse for what you did, but boy, it really is a great feeling. And I have not done it for a while, but I'm in Davos. There's no Orthodox church in Davos. I would have to go to Zurich. Orthodox Easter is on the 20th of April this year, and that would be pretty tough to go to Zurich. Anyway, I shouldn't be talking about myself. So there's no penance. The priest, again, I'm not Roman Catholic, so I may be misrepresenting things, but in the Roman Catholic Church, if I understand it correctly, then you're given a task to do with certain number of Our Fathers, a number of Hail Marys, but there's no penance per se, at least not in the Greek Orthodox Church. In the Greek Orthodox Church, basically the priest can tell you the version of penance would be to ask you to abstain from the Eucharist for a certain period of time, like maybe for a month or and if you kill someone, even if it's an accident, even if somebody runs out in front of your car, or you're a soldier on the battlefield and you kill somebody who's trying to kill you, you're still expected to abstain from the Eucharist for a while. At least that's what the priests at Holy Trinity say. You're supposed to, that in a dire situation like that, it's not a matter of committing a crime. Even if, as I say, even if it was completely accidental, there's harm that's done to the soul in a situation like that. And you need to spend some time making your peace with it before you then go and receive the Eucharist. So how did that work with Dmitri? Obviously, he confessed being directly involved in this murder. And I don't know. Did the priest tell him, well, don't then receive the Eucharist on Pascha? I don't know. I haven't read ahead to that diary entry to see if he talks about receiving the Eucharist. It could be that the priest asked him not to. It could be that things were a bit different with Grand Dukes, though they shouldn't be. It could be that they were. It could be that this priest saw just really how remorseful Dmitri was and realized that Dmitri had voluntarily abstained from the Eucharist for, well, since the event itself of the assassination, and figured that was enough time and that it was actually really important for him now to receive the Eucharist. So we don't know, but anyway, maybe we'll find out a little more. And I agree, it's very touching that Maria was praying for him the whole time that he was with the priest in confession. And any of you who have watched the 1906, 1907 videos for the diary entries for that period will know that Dmitri was not, I taught Sunday school in the Greek Orthodox Church for 10 years, and I know some of the kids, it was just, it just didn't sink in. This is an important thing with confession. But Dmitri, even when he was 14, 15, 16, it seemed to me like it did. And he kind of, for a while, was dreading it. And he said that, he managed, when he describes one time when he did go to confession, he says he managed not to cry. So that was good. But, he took it seriously. It was hard. And so, yeah, Maria, how religious was she? I don't know. Seems like she was more so than Dmitri. In a sense, she was more devout, let us say. With Dmitri, not really. I wouldn't call him devout, but I would say the belief was very genuine and very deep. Even though, again, as you know, he'd sort of gotten into New Thought philosophy and was interested in Hinduism and that sort of thing. But that orthodox, foundational sort of orthodox belief was still, I think, very strong in him. Okay, so what will we have next time? We will have his description of the actual experience of going to the church and what it was like there, and this being the first time that he'd confessed after the Russian Revolution. It was very different for a Romanov to go to church and join the rest of the people who were going to confess before Pascha. Another instance where he realized that this is a new reality. It's not, you're still a Grand Duke, you're still, a Romanov, but things are a little bit different now. So that will be an interesting diary entry. I guess this is a good time to stop since we're losing light, but come back next time. Hopefully tomorrow, if I get a chance to buy, a phone stand, and you'll see a little bit more of Schatz Alp. And I hope to see you then. Bye.